and you begin to make meaning, and that is how you build a knowledge base. There is an expectation that right now, you are at your first year. The kind of information you're receiving is very basic. But as you go on, your lecturers will continue to build the knowledge to levels of difficulty, levels of higher understanding. So it means that you must be able to develop your listening ability. You must work on how you listen. You must work on what you listen to. And you must tell yourself that you must be focused about listening. It's only in that way that you'll be able to build, number one, your knowledge base. And number two, you'll be able to perform well in your exams. And number three, you will be able to make an application of the information you have received. Students who only hear are unable to make application. And I want to tell you this in advance. Your examinations will not be comprehension examinations. They will not be examinations that are simply testing recall. There will be examinations that require you to make an application, to synthesize information, to analyze information, and come up with an understanding, and then give that as your answer. So if you're simply hearing, there is going to be a problem when it comes to answering the questions. And you realize this when you get into the exam room. You will see the questions. You will see some students who will be writing continuously up to the end of the exam period. And then we have those who will just be looking up because they're trying to recall. And in trying to recall, sometimes you may recall just some statements, some facts. Some people even go on to recall jokes that were made during the lesson, but they are not able to connect information and give it as an answer. So my students, I want you to develop good listening effectively. And I want to say that listening is a process, just the way I said in the beginning. That means it proceeds in a certain order, and this order has been established and clearly discussed and reviewed by scholars. And they say that this process begins at the point of receiving. So what are you receiving? You are receiving information with your ears. It could be course information. It could be a message. It could be some sound, but you are receiving it, and you're receiving it with your ear. Sometimes you even receive it with your eyes. You see, and you're receiving. But the first thing that happens is that in the listening process, you must be able to hear some sounds. Those sounds usually hit the eardrums. The eardrums will vibrate and send a message to the mind. Now, this message, when you are listening, then you begin to interpret. The human mind and the human listening, the whole listening process is such that it is automated. You can only interfere with it by being a lazy listener, or you can only interfere with it by not thinking. But usually when the sound comes to your ear, it will move on to your mind or to your brain, and your brain begins to do something else in the process of receiving this information. Then the second thing that happens in this process is attending. After the message has been received, then your mind will focus on what is it that you were hearing. Sometimes, let me give you an example. Sometimes you're in a classroom and there is some commotion, perhaps people screaming in the corridor. You will receive the sound of screaming. And then your brain will begin to ask you, or begin to tell you, this sound means this. Perhaps it means that someone has been hit, someone has fallen, someone has collapsed, or something bad has happened to result in the screaming which you heard. So the human brain begins to attend to the information they have received in the form of a sound. And usually this happens in two places. In your short memory, that is a place, short-term memory. That is where the information is held for a short while, and then perhaps you begin to respond to it. If the sound has nothing to do with you responding, then it will be pushed to your long-term memory, and that is where it will sit. And perhaps later on in the day, someone will ask you, there was a sound in the corridor, someone was screaming, what was it? And then your brain will bring back that scenario, and then perhaps you may want to give a response and say, I don't know what was happening. Perhaps was it someone who was fainting, or someone was being hit, or something was happening in the corridor that resulted in the sound that I heard. Number 3 is perceiving. Perceiving is the ability to realize that something, to realize something which is not obvious. As you are hearing this sound, as you are attending to it, then you are making what we call perception. You're beginning to filter. You're beginning to separate. It could be this or it could be the other. You're perceiving. And then you begin to interpret. You give meaning to the sound that you heard. Was the sound about someone being hit? Was the sound about, let us say, members of parliament visiting us? Or was the sound about my mother coming to wake me up? There is some sound now, you begin to do an interpretation. Then number 5, you respond. After you have received, attended, interpreted the information, then it is important to respond. Respond is like a kind of an awakening. Let us say you realize that the sound that you are hearing outside was actually someone collapsing. So you'll all want to stand up and find your way to the door so that you can confirm, was it someone being attacked, or was it someone being finding themselves in a bad place and you need to help? So it is a kind of a response, a kind of a feedback. And that is what you do when you are listening. So every listening process, scenario, I mean, will require you to go through these stages. If the lecturer is speaking, for example, you will receive the sound. You will attend to the sound. You will tell yourself, this sound is my lecturer speaking in English. You will begin to perceive the kind of sound, the kind of information that they are sharing with you. The information could be in the area of listening skills, or it could be in the area of communication or computer or something like that. And then you interpret what is supposed to be your response to this information, and then listening will have happened. Then we have various forms of listening, and these are applicable in different situations. We have what we call listening for comprehension, or comprehensive listening. This is listening where you try to understand something, you try to understand information. For example, when you go to church and the preacher is sharing some preaching, what you're doing is you're listening for comprehension. You want to have an understanding of what the preacher is saying. You are in the Vice Chancellor's address. The Vice Chancellor is speaking to you. You are trying to understand. You are listening for understanding. Now, listening for understanding requires that you focus on the person. It requires that you even take brief notes. It requires that you are able to remember and join that information to other information that you have before, prior to this scenario where you are listening to some information. So usually when you're doing comprehensive listening, you are engaged in a kind of trying to understand what is being shared with you. Then we have appreciative listening. And this is listening for enjoyment, listening for entertainment. You are listening to your music. For example, you like certain music, gospel music, perhaps rap music. You are listening to appreciate. Sometimes you may make movements in line with what you're listening to. And sometimes even the music may not even have words, but you're simply appreciating. You'll see people following. Perhaps the music has only one line or one word, which is being repeated over and over again. But for you, it is music because you're listening, you're appreciating. Appreciative listening. Now, when it comes to appreciative listening, we may not take notes. We may not need to remember anything. We are simply enjoying ourselves. The most interesting thing about appreciative listening is that you realize that later on, because you are not under any force to remember, you will still remember. For example, if you're listening to a football match, you are a supporter of a certain team, you are listening to how the match is going on. Usually, after the match is over, you are able to remember clearly the movements. You are able to remember the names of who scored or who lost. You are able to recount the way the match went on. Another example, you are listening to your favorite TV program. What will happen is that you will be able to remember the names because you're not under any pressure. And therefore, your brain works optimally. You don't have any pressure to remember. No one is going to test you on a program, for example, which you love on TV. No one is going to ask you. So the brain, being in a relaxed position, is able to remember that later on. You're able to remember the characters, you're able to remember the plot of the story, you're able to remember the conflict that was there and what went on. Unlike when it comes to a place where we are talking about listening for comprehension, because you are under pressure to remember. Sometimes it becomes difficult for the brain to do exactly that. Then we have empathetic or therapeutic listening. Now, this is a kind of listening where you are feeling with the other person. It could be a friend of yours who has perhaps had a bad experience. Perhaps they were walking back to college and someone stole their phone. Or perhaps they received some bad news from home. Or perhaps they're unwell. And as you are talking to them, you are listening to empathize. You want to feel with them. And this kind of listening requires that you focus on the person who is talking to you. You may not say anything. You don't have to write any notes. And you don't even have to remember much about what they were saying. The key thing here is that you focus on them. You listen to them and you make some certain sounds, like you say, oh, that was very sad. Oh, these people are very bad. Why did they steal your phone? This is not good. Things like that. But majorly, you are focusing on the other person so that they can explain to you what they are going through and you feel with them in terms of their experiences. That is empathetic or therapeutic listening. I would refer to the nursing students to this kind of listening because many times you will listen to your patients. Of course, in the nursing training, they say, do not empathize. No, do not sympathize, empathize. Meaning, listen and put yourself in the shoes of the patient. You want to attend to them, but you want to understand how are they feeling, what experiences are they going through, so that at the end of it, then you can be able to give them a way forward and you can be able to respond to them. That is therapeutic listening. Then we have critical listening. And critical listening involves listening so that you can make judgment. So you are listening to information and your intention is to understand what the person is saying and then not just understand, but also make a judgment. For example, you are listening to an advertisement. They are saying that they're selling some kind of toothpaste that will turn your teeth white and that will straighten your teeth even if they are crooked. So you are listening to them and your intention is to find out, is there a possibility that just by using a toothpaste, your teeth can be straightened? Or if they were brown or whichever color, can they turn to be sparkling white? So you are listening with the intention of making some judgment, either to go and buy that toothpaste or refrain and tell yourself it was just an advertisement, gimmick, and there is no truth. But usually you will need to listen first before you make the judgment. Sometimes people of the female gender, they do not employ critical listening when they are purchasing things. They see, let us say, someone on the streets selling a certain product, and on the face of the product, we have a beautiful lady with sparkling teeth and a very clear skin and very long hair. And then the person says, if you buy this product, you're going to be as beautiful as this lady. And this person is dark in complexion. They have very short hair. Their hair doesn't ever grow. It doesn't move. Their teeth are the way God created them. And then they go on and buy the product. After using it for some time, then you hear them complaining that I was just cheated. It is not true. Nothing like that I was promised happened. What you did not do is you did not listen critically. Sometimes when we listen critically, we even ask questions. For example, we ask, how will this product turn my hair to be very long? Yet my hair naturally, my mother, my grandmother, and all that are around me have short hair. How is it that I'm going to end up with long hair? So critical listening allows you to come up with questions. And like we voters in Kenya and in other many places, sometimes we are told by the aspirants, they tell us, oh, if you vote for me, I am going to ensure that all the university students get some bursary. Then you go on and cast your vote for that person. When the person doesn't bring the bursary, then you go on and say, this was a very bad person. I will never vote for them. The truth is you did not listen critically. You need to ask yourself, in my constituency, we have about 1,000 university students. How will this one person is vying to be an MCA, is vying to be a member of parliament? How is this one person going to give all of us some bursary, and yet we are very needy? So when you do critical listening, you need also to include an aspect of questioning. Then we have discriminative listening, and this involves choosing what to listen to and what not to listen to. For example, I know you could be seated at the pavilion, you could be seated under a tree, you could be seated at the student center, you could be seated on the corridors in academia, you could be seated somewhere in some room, but you have ignored all other sounds that are going on around you. You have ignored all other people that are passing because you have to listen to this lesson. So you have done discriminative listening. You have made a choice. And this is part of what you need to be able to do. There are times when there will be so many voices around you, so many sounds around you, but you need to make a decision on what you will listen to and what you will not listen to. Remember when we were defining listening, we said it is deliberate, it is focused, meaning you choose. So if you allow yourself to listen to every sound, the sound of the birds in the air, the sound of those that are passing with their bicycles, the sounds of those that are talking in the corridors, then you will end up a very confused person. The beautiful thing is that you only need to tell yourself, I want to focus on this. I want to focus on the lesson. I want to focus on my roommate. Your roommate is talking to you, and around you are many other people. But you're saying, I want to listen to what my roommate is saying. So what you're doing is discriminative listening, and which is something you must train yourself, because there will be opportunities when this will be required. For example, you are in a workplace, and your boss is also speaking to you amidst many other speakers. You need to be able to choose to listen to your boss, because if you do not do that, then you may be sacked. You are in a relationship, in a marriage, for example, and your child is speaking to you amidst other people that are there, adults. But you must be able to discriminate and say, I'll listen to my child. Perhaps your child is saying, I am burning, or something has pierced my hand, or I need food, and you are busy listening to the adults and you have forgotten your child. Then things will not go very well. So we need to develop discriminative listening if we have to do well as listeners. Then, to listen effectively, one needs to consider a number of factors. Among these factors is the sitting position. If you are in a lecture room, I know right now you're seated all over, but if you are in a lecture room, it is important for you to position yourself in a place where the sound can reach you, a place where you can see the non-verbal communication that is going on, that is being used by the speaker, a place where you are not distracted by, let us say, a friend or sounds that are coming from outside the room. Your sitting position is very important. Even just the way you position yourself on a chair. Some people say that the best place they like, the best position they like when they are listening, let us say, to music, would be to lie down on a bed and listen to their music or watch their movie on their phone. That could be the way it helps you to be able to enjoy whatever you're listening to. But there are certain positions that you must adopt when you are seriously engaged in listening. Like you must sit in an upright position. You must be in a place where you can see, where the sound can be able to reach you. The second thing you should do when you're listening is to read on the topic prior to the day. So if you know that in our next lesson, we're going to be looking at study skills, then it is important that you have an understanding. You read around study skills. The beauty about reading is that nowadays there's so much knowledge, so much information on the internet. Once you key in, you Google any topic, you will get so much information. There is so much information, so much video, so much written information that is freely available. And so what you need to do is simply to Google. And when you do that, when you read ahead or prior to the day when you're listening, you realize that the information seems to add up in a much better way, because now you're connecting what you already know with what you are listening to. And it makes the information you grasp or your knowledge base becomes much more stronger, because you already have information of the prior to the listening scenario. So it is important as a student that you don't just walk into the lecture room with a blank mind. Take time. That's why you have 24 hours as a student. And that is why the greatest focus of Kibabi University is to ensure that you even stay inside the compound, so that you have internet and so that you can be able to access as much of the information that is available on campus. Our libraries open up to, is it 9 in the night? The internet available throughout, so that you can be able to Google and get as much information as possible. So how you end up getting information, that is something you must be able to decide. And then when you come to the listening, now you will be joining the bits of information and you'll be much more informed and much more in a better place of understanding. Number 3 thing is to avoid detractors. Detractors are all those things and people that may affect your listening. Usually, it could be your colleague, it could be a friend, it could be noise from outside or from inside the room. These detractors usually may take you away from the information you're listening to in a few seconds, but when you come back, you're not able to connect where you left and where you are at the moment. So it is important that you work on the detractors. What is it that is around you that is likely to affect what you're listening to? so that you then can be able to control it. If it's a friend, make it clear to your friend that you have come to learn. Make it clear that you can share the WhatsApp, you can share WhatsApp messages, you can share the WhatsApp videos much later after the lesson, but we cannot use the lesson to look at WhatsApp. We cannot use the lesson to look at Facebook or to just go and get lost inside the internet world. We must be able to avoid detractors. Then there is exclusive listening and focusing on the speaker. When you are in a place where you are listening to information, it's important that you exclusively listen to the speaker. That means you turn all your focus and it is on the speaker, and you are trying to get information from what they are sharing with you. Then finally, we have avoid personal prejudice. When you're listening to somebody, of course, the information will be coming from a person. You need to avoid making judgment about the person. Judgment perhaps about the way they are speaking, judgment about the way they are dressing, judgment about what you know about them in the past. Because sometimes we listen to people whom we know already in the past. Perhaps you saw them failing in a certain place. And so today when they're sharing with you, you want to bring in that scenario of their failure. The truth is, when you bring in that scenario, it takes away your ability to listen. And there's a possibility, therefore, that instead of you getting what you're supposed to be getting, you will end up making a judgment and you will lose out. And many times it happens. Sometimes you get speakers, people who come to share with us information. Sometimes it is about your lecturer. Sometimes it could even be about your colleague, because we are going to be having tutorial presentations where perhaps one of the group members is expected to stand in front and share what the group has come up with. So if you perhaps know something about this person and you begin to think about that, then you will lose focus on what this person is sharing, and you may end up therefore missing very vital information that could be useful for you. So one of the things you need to do is to avoid personal prejudice. Do not overthink about the person that is sharing information with you. Let the person, what you know about the person, be on the side, and you benefit from what is happening today. Now, listening is closely connected to note-taking. Listening is closely connected to note-taking. Student, what is the difference between note-taking and note-making? I want you to go to the chat. Let me know, what is the difference between note-taking and note-making? Again, like we said the other time, you say not making is this, while not taking is this. You don't just focus on one direction. If you give it one direction, then you are not giving the correct answer. So you say not taking is active, while not making is passive. That's what someone is saying. You are not right. Not taking and not making, active and passive, no. Someone is saying not taking is when you listen, not making is when you read, you're right. Not taking is what you hear, is writing down what you hear, while not making is writing down what you read. Not making is internalizing information. No, that is not right. This person who is insisting on not making being active and not taking being passive, that is not right. It's not correct. So when we talk about note taking happens at that point where we are listening, then we take notes. But when we are reading, then we make notes. So it has nothing to do with active or passive. It has something to do with the state in which you are receiving information. In one state, you are receiving information by listening. In another state, you are receiving information by reading. So when you do this, then you're either not taking or you're not making. In your normal lectures, when you go to your small groups, you do a lot of note taking because your lecturers will be in front of you and they will be speaking. When you go to the online platform where we have posted videos, we have posted notes, you read the notes and you make your own notes. That is the very difference. So when you take short notes, it's also important for you to do the following. You watch out for the non-verbal communication. So you're not just listening to the words, watch the non-verbal communication. Remember when we're looking at types of communication, we said non-verbal communication is very expressive. That means it expresses more than even what the verbal communication can do. And also, when you're taking notes, it's important for you to maintain eye contact. That means you will not be writing notes throughout. Develop a short form in the way in which you write your notes. Each person has a shorthand which they can use to write their notes. I'm sure you have been using it in the past, but also you are not late in developing a shorthand form of writing your notes. So anytime you're listening to someone speaking, remember that part of what you need to do is to maintain eye contact. So that means you'll not be writing, you'll not be copying sentence after sentence. That is not note taking. Note taking is taking the main points, and that is what we mean by strategies for taking notes. You will take the main points. You will take the outline of the points. You need also, when you're taking notes, to listen actively. When you're listening actively, part of it is by the writing of short notes. But also, as you're listening, you are also making some sounds that help the speaker to know that they have you as part of their audience. Not that you're just there, you're quiet, you're just looking as if you're lost, because there is a way in which you can know whether a person is listening to you or they are lost, or they have assumed you, or they are in another world. I'm sure you have heard it said that sometimes people are in a room, but their body's in a room, but their mind is walking outside there and making decisions and doing many, many other things. That is a possibility. So the person is looking at you, but they are gazing and their mind is in a distant place where they are making negotiations and doing many other things. But when you're taking short notes, you are doing what we call active listening, because short notes will help you to focus. You will focus on trying to get what you can write down. You'll want to know which is the point. And usually the lecturer will make an indication of which are the points. So listen to the active points. Sometimes the lecturer will say, this is very important. That is a signal that the information they want to share is worthy being captured. Sometimes the lecturer will say, I have 10 points which I want you to note regarding this concept. So what that tells you is that you need at the end of it to have noted 10 points. Let us say you find yourself, you have noted only 5. Then you can now work with a colleague and try to find out, make comparisons. What points did you get and which ones did I miss? So that then as we compare, we are able to come up with the 10 points or the 10 ideas together. So the lecturer will usually give a signal. And sometimes they will even help you by saying, this is the introduction. And these are the main points I want you to note. And this is the conclusion. And this is where I want you to go and read. This is the author I want you to focus on. This is the topic I want to, this is a chapter. All that information is information that you are listening to. Listen for those particular aspects of information. Now, just like any other area of communication, listening has barriers. And we said in our earlier lesson that a barrier is anything that affects the communication process. Now, when we're talking about barriers to listening, we are talking about those things that will result in us being unable to listen effectively. We want to look at them and we want to see how can we mitigate them? How can we eliminate them? How can we work against them? So I'm asking, do you know of any barrier that a student at your level may face? Any listening barrier or any barrier to listening that a student at your level may face? Turn to the chat. Let me know of any barrier to listening that a student may face. Someone has said noise, language barrier, distractions from a friend, lack of concentration, accent, not paying attention, personality. That is right. I wish the person with personality was able to help us understand better. Negative attitude towards the speaker, you're right. Prejudgment, ego, sitting posture, distance from the speaker, mental sickness, that is right. Stress, dress code. Someone has even said dress code can affect your listening. Negative judgment, fear. Yes, fear can also, and health problems, boredom, shyness. I don't know how shyness can affect your listening. Perhaps the shyness by the speaker may cause you, someone is saying laziness. I don't know how laziness can affect your listening. Can you be lazy to listen? Poor timing, that is right. How bullying can affect your listening, I don't know. Psychology, that's right. Psychological hunger, that is right. So all these are aspects that can affect you as a student. And when you know that they can affect you as a student, then we're asking ourselves next, how can you overcome them? Because you have to listen and you have to pass in your exam. So how do we overcome some of them? How can we overcome some of this? Someone is saying eat to avoid hunger. The speaker needs to be audible. Change your mindset. That is right. Dress well. Illness, look for medical attention. That is right. Sit in the right place. Develop a positive attitude. I wish that one could explain to us how you can develop a positive attitude. How can you like the topic or like the speaker or like the course? Maintain eye contact. That is very, very important. Maintain eye contact. Avoid distractors. Keep time. That is right. Keep time. Sometimes you arrive in a place and you are late. And because you are late, you are busy trying to settle down. Someone is saying avoid multitasking. And you're right, avoid multitasking. Don't go to your phone, as well as trying to listen. Look for a conducive environment. Concentrate. Good hygiene. Someone is saying good hygiene. Perhaps your neighbor is smelling, he didn't brush their teeth, or they didn't put on something that makes them smell well. And so they are therefore an aspect of distraction. You're not able to listen. Someone is saying project your voice. Then I want us to also see what are the advantages of good listening skills. If we develop good listening, what are the advantages of good listening, either in school, at a workplace, with your parents? Someone is saying you get the exact message. It improves your study, that is right. It enables you to understand, that is very good. Here you're able to understand concepts. Here it helps you to capture the exact message. It helps you to enjoy your stay. That is right. Sometimes they say, do this so that you can stay well, and you did not listen. So you end up suffering. So for you to enjoy your stay, yes, it avoids collision. That is right. Sometimes when we listen to one another, we are able to avoid misunderstanding. We're able to avoid colliding. It helps us to build trust and confidence. That is very right. It improves. It helps you to be accepted. That is right. I can see a nurse saying it helps you to attend to the patient with understanding. Good listening will help you attend to your patient well, so that you're not giving the patient the wrong medicine. You're not giving the patient the wrong diagnosis. It will help you to maintain time management. Now, let us ask ourselves another question. What are some of the results of poor listening? Poor listening, what are some of the results? It brings confusion, brings failure, misunderstanding, loss of life, failing exams, misunderstanding. You may get the wrong information, may lead to conflict, incorrect message, may result in people judging you, leads to low self-esteem. That is right. It causes anger. Yes, someone is saying that it causes anger. Your job will not be fruitful. Unsuccessful career. Someone is saying you'll have an unsuccessful career. You will give the wrong prescription. That is right. And if you give the wrong prescription, you have killed someone or you have affected them. It will lead to stigmatization, inefficiency, poor customer care. It will cause you to quarrel. That is, if it is in a family, for example, in a marriage, there will be quarrels because of poor listening. You will lose your time. You'll not get the right direction. Someone is giving you directions to a place and you're not listening. You will end up getting lost. It will cause fighting, ineffective frustration, and all that kind of thing. So what we are saying is that we need to develop good listening skills. And because it is something we require for now as a student, for the future as an employer, for the future as a family person, for the future as a Kenyan, and as an officer of some repute, it's important. It is important that you ensure that as you're going through this course, you practice these things. Practice listening skills. When you are in a place where you are expected to sit to sit down and listen to a person, make sure that you are in a place, you're positioned in a place where you can get the speaker clearly, you can see their non-verbal cues, and you can be able, therefore, to capture important points and write them down. And we're saying closely connected to listening is note making. So if you have to be an effective listener, you must also write notes. So if you have been invited, let us say, to the Vice Chancellor's address, and you simply walk there, then you don't know what you're doing. You need to walk there with a notebook. Write down, capture some of the information. And then when you're capturing, we said you're not capturing throughout, you're not writing full sentences. You develop a shorthand. So from today, begin to develop a shorthand of what you can, of how you can capture information, so that you are also listening and you're also capturing important information. Because some of your lecturers will not give you notes. They will simply speak the way a radio speaks continuously. I'm sure you've never put off the radio and said, pardon. The radio never pardons. The radio moves on with the whatever information it was sharing. So if you get to that kind of understanding that your lecturers may give you notes or not give you notes, then it is important for you to develop good listening skills and therefore good note-taking skills. On the e-learning platform, I've given you some videos, I've given you notes, which I want you to look at so that you are able then to establish clearly what we mean by listening. So our topic number 4 is effective study skills. Now, one of the things you will do apart from listening, and apart from writing, apart from reading, is you'll be engaged in studying. And when you're engaged in studying, we have what we call a definition of studying. And studying, again, is a process. I have not written that for you, but when you go to my notes, you'll see the definition of studying. And I've said studying is the process of making meaning out of information. Now, studying is different from reading. There are times when students think they are studying, when in actual sense, they are reading. Studying begins from reading, just the way listening begins from hearing. So you must have some information before you. And the way to study is to read this information and then begin to make meaning out of it. When we are reading, we are simply trying to interpret the written symbols. The written symbols will be in a language which we know. If today I wrote to you a message in Chinese, there is a possibility that if you know Chinese, you will understand my message. If you do not know Chinese, you will simply see the written symbols. If I've given you this information on your phone, or I've written you a letter, but it's in Chinese, you will simply see the characters, the written symbols. And these written symbols will not say much to you. When we are studying, we look at the written symbols, and then we go on to try and make meaning out of those written symbols. So that is where I'll want us to begin from next time, because we want to say that we will do a lot of studying. Studying will be your business. In secondary school where you have come from, your teachers organized for you how to study, when to study, what to have when you're studying. But now at this level of your learning, it is important for you to know that it is you who will organize your studying. You'll organize your study environment. You'll organize the activities you need to undertake when you're studying. You will organize what you need to purchase in order to undertake your studying. You'll organize your study timetable, and put all these things together and be able to make sense out of your studying moments. You need even to think about who can be your study partners, who can be your group members, whom can you work with as you study, so that together you can be able to make sense of the information. You can be able to make sense of the information that you are receiving. So I want to stop at this point and to say that next time we'll be looking at effective study skills. And I want to encourage you to visit the e-learning platform, to write the notes. I am sure by now you have seen how our second years, our third years, and our fourth years behave. They sit in groups and they work together under trees, in the corners of classrooms, in certain hotspots. Where there is a hotspot, they will usually be there trying to work together. When you have a video, for example, you can open the video, listen to it as a group, and then begin to find out what is it that is important, that is related to the topic that is shared in the video. In that way, you will be building your knowledge base. What we want is for you to be a specialist in communication. You are able to communicate effectively. You are able to use the knowledge you have acquired to be able to communicate. And I want lastly to say this, that communication skills are one of the soft skills that your employer will be looking out for when you go out into the field. The reason is people who can be able to communicate are also good workers. You can communicate in written, you can communicate in speaking, you can listen, you can be able to speak. All these are aspects that will make you a better employer in comparison to another person. So let us get on together, go to the e-learning platform, make your notes. No one will check whether you have made notes or not, but the exam is going to come, and our CAT is going to be an online CAT. After we look at effective studying skills, the next thing we'll do is an online CAT. So together with the ODEL department, the ODEL directorate will be organizing to help you understand how to undertake an online CAT. So have a good afternoon and see you again in our next lesson.